I recently saw a post on Facebook and someone asked whether their spouse, who previously said they were a US citizen when they in fact were not, and now is married to a US citizen, could eventually get some sort of legal green card status. And in this video, I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to walk through what the person said and the options and just what needs to be analyzed further in order to be able to see, what the options are for this person. So first things first, this is the post. It said it's a long story, but I'll keep it short. 9 years before I met my wife, who is a Mexicana, when she was 18, she had tried to enter the United States and said she was a US citizen. So right there, that could potentially be a false claim to US citizen, falsely claiming you are a US citizen. And I'll run through, what we need to look for to determine whether there was a false claim made. If there was a false claim made, these are usually kind of like a kiss of death in immigration, just because it generally doesn't have a waiver. There's a few limited exceptions where even if you might have a false claim, it may not apply. And I'll touch upon that, later on in the video. So this person said that they were a US citizen. They turned her around and sent her back. She didn't make it 100 feet into the US. A few months later, and this would be, okay, so a few months later, she passed with her aunt in the US with no questions asked at the border. Within 45 days, she returned to Mexico, where she had remained since 2000. I met her in 2009. I hired an attorney. I spent $8,000 attorney fees, application, etc. She was told that she was approved. When we went to Juarez, they told her it was a lifetime bar and she could never enter the US ever again. The first 7 years, I traveled back and forth from Hermosillo to Tucson once a month. 8 years ago, I became disabled and could not support two households. I moved to San Carlos, Sonora, and we were legally married in Mexico. She has family in the States, and all family live in the States. In the last 3 years, my health has become increasingly difficult. I can no longer make the drive to my doctors in Arizona by myself. I can't afford another attorney. I have a home in New Mexico where we could live. At a minimum, we would like to find a way that she can travel and drive for me to see my doctors. I feel stuck. Anyone have any ideas? Other than the problem in 2000 at the border, she has never even had a traffic ticket in Mexico or in the US. So, yeah, I feel for you. Very tough situation. There's a lot going on, in terms of financially, in terms of the disability, in terms of, basically getting scammed. Maybe this attorney didn't know what they were doing. Maybe it wasn't even an attorney. Maybe it was a notary. But nonetheless, I have seen it where sometimes a person goes to a notary. The notary, because they're not an attorney, they don't know that there's a permanent bar. They don't know about the false claim to US citizenship status. At times, they don't even ask for it because all they're doing is filling out the forms. And then when they're asked about this at, the interview, the person, saying and just wanting to be truthful, they say everything, they say the whole truth, and they don't know that this could negatively affect them. And the first time they learn about it is at the interview. Okay, so feel really bad for this person, feel really bad for this family. So first things first, when she was 18, she tried to enter the US and said she was a citizen. Potential false claim, but it's also going to be worthwhile to know, like, when did she enter? It says right here that within 45 days, she returned to Mexico and she's remained there since 2000. I met her in 2009. And then it says 9 years before I met my wife. So pretty much probably like in around 99, 2000, this is when she said she was a US citizen. It could have been in writing, could have been verbally, it could have been presenting a birth certificate or passport. All of those are statements that, hey, I'm a US citizen. So it's likely this incident happened in 99, in 2000. And that when she had the interview, probably around that same time frame, immigration discovered either by her statement or they probably had some sort of record when she came in 2000 that she stated she was a US citizen. The person's now disabled. He lives in Sonora. They got married. His health has become increasingly difficult. Okay, so I want to pull this up. Pretty much, this has, some good information in terms about the false claim to US citizenship status. And this is pretty much the issue, in my opinion, about this case. He's a citizen. Generally, generally, if you're a US citizen, you can petition for your partner, your spouse, husband, wife, and you can help them get their green card. Of course, you still have to prove other things, but the first thing is that, you have to have a citizen or resident spouse for a family petition. Of course, there's other kinds of petitions, but in this case, this is what would apply. So right here, determining false claim of U.S. citizenship status. For a non-citizen to be inadmissible based on a false claim, an officer must find all of the following elements: that the non-citizen made a representation of U.S. citizenship, the representation was false, and the non-citizen made the false representation for any purpose or benefit under the Immigration or Nationality Act or any other federal or state law. A mouthful. It's going to go walk here a little bit further, but pretty much non-citizen made a representation of U.S. citizenship. Could be verbally, could be in writing, it could be presenting some sort of document, but they said that they were a citizen when they were not. The representation was false. They were not a U.S. citizen. The non-citizen made the statement, made the representation for any purpose or benefit. So if you want to get some sort of legal entry into the U.S., it's easier to come across the border with the fake document rather than it is to cross the border undocumented. That is a benefit. Gaining entry into the U.S. is a benefit. Gaining some sort of immigration status, any immigration document, is an immigration benefit. Here, the thing was she was trying to enter the U.S. legally when she in fact could not. So that would be the benefit. So step one, whether a false claim was made, it seems likely. We don't know what way it was made, but it seems like it was. Determine when it was made. So the important thing is that this rule was not in effect until about September 30th, 1996. From the statement, it seems that this happened in 2000. If so, then this still applies. If it happened before 1996, then there might be some arguments to get around it, but it seems like it happened in 2000. Determine whether non-citizens' false claim to U.S. citizenship was for the purpose of obtaining a benefit under the immigration laws. If she is telling this at the border, it's very likely this is met. I mean, I could perhaps maybe see, let's say, and I don't really foresee it really happening too much, but let's say an individual is like stopped in a car, they have their brother's passport or something, immigration gets it and they're like, hey, you're not a citizen. In that scenario, I mean, there could still be arguments that you're still using it, but if like it's in your pocket and you're not doing anything else, you're not, saying that's you, then I would say that you're not using it to obtain a benefit. Maybe you're just holding it there for your brother. If you're trying to impersonate him so that they don't deport you, then yeah, that's an immigration benefit. Step 4, determine whether non-citizen timely retracted the false claim. So I have had a consultation, or there's even this video. It's about and I made a video on my YouTube channel, but pretty much it's a comedian, Jimmy O Yang, and pretty much what this guy did was that he was a legal permanent resident. He went with his friends, to Mexico. All his friends were citizens, and when this guy came back, he had never, entered the U.S. with his green card, and pretty much what happened was, his friends were just telling him like, hey, no big deal, just tell him you're a citizen, they'll let you through. He didn't think too much of it. He told him he was a citizen, and then after further inspection, they were like, no, you're not. This is your green card, this and that, and after that, then he was like, no, honestly, yeah, I am a resident. My buddies, they told me to say this. I didn't even really understand what was going on, but I am a resident. So pretty much, in my opinion, when he said, yeah, I'm a resident, he likely retracted his false claim to U.S. citizenship, and it was timely. Like it didn't take years. It didn't take for something negative to happen. It didn't take for immigration to place him in removal proceedings. He said it, pretty quickly, and because of that, no negative consequence to him. Here, if it's been years, I would say it's likely going to be difficult to timely retract the false claim, but yeah, something to consider. Determine whether a non-citizen is exempt from inadmissibility because a statutory exception applies. Determine whether a waiver of inadmissibility is available. So, I mean, yeah, in terms of these two, like whether an exemption or exception applies, if a person is eligible for a U visa or they have a cancellation of removal case, two things that are not really common, two things that are very specific. You have to be eligible. If you're not, you can't just apply for it. I mean, you could, but they're going to deny it. And for U visa, I mean, pretty much for that, you know, I have other videos up here on the channel, but pretty much you have to be the victim of some sort of crime in the US, suffer a lot from it. If this person, you know, based on the facts, it's not clear whether she's been the victim of some sort of crime in the US, and due to the fact she's probably been here for less than a year, due to the fact that she's been in the US for less than a year, it's likely that maybe there's no eligibility for a U visa. Additionally, for the cancellation of removal, she would have to be in the US, be in removal proceedings in immigration court, and also show that she's been in the US for at least 10 years. Within those 10 years that she's a person of good moral character. And based on these facts, it doesn't seem that, you know, this person would be eligible to show that they have been here for at least 10 years. And going back here to the website, any officer can make the determination. As I was saying, a non-citizen may claim in an oral interview, written application by evidence. Intent to obtain a benefit, whether a non-citizen made the false claim with the specific intent of attaining a benefit is question of fact and dependent upon the circumstances. The non-citizen has a burden to show that he or she did not have the intent of obtaining the benefit. Like I said, I mean, if you're presenting this at the border, I mean, why else would you be presenting at the border? You know, it's because you want to get some sort of immigration benefit. You want to get into the US. It's going to be hard to argue the opposite. I mean, if you're being like trafficked, someone is forcing you to like smuggle things like that, then maybe. But if you're voluntarily doing it, I think it's going to be very difficult to show the opposite. A benefit includes passport, entry into the US, like I said, employment, etc. Representation must be for your own benefit for purposes of coming to the US. Timely retraction, it must be timely. So yeah, I mean, I'll put this link in the description of the video so that you can also take a look at it. And what I'll say as well, like in terms of this person, I mean, what other options exist? You know, I mean, it seems that this person is living in Sonora, in Mexico. Ideally, they would want to live, you know, in New Mexico, in the US, because that's where they likely maybe have their health insurance. Maybe that's where they have their primary doctor. That's where they've gotten their treatment and are still getting their treatment. So it would make sense, you know, go to the same doctor that knows their case. And what I would say is, I mean, there is something called humanitarian parole. It's not a permanent immigration benefit. It's, you know, there's many different types of parole. One of the common scenarios where we hear about humanitarian parole is for people that are fleeing their home country and coming to the US and seeking asylum. Sometimes they're granted humanitarian parole to continue their case here in the US. Humanitarian parole, it's not for one specific specific type of case. It just allows, you know, the attorney general, pretty much, you know, the immigration officers, if they determine that, you know, there is, you know, humanitarian basis for allowing this person in, they will allow them in. And that might be an option here. I mean, I don't know how severe the you know, the disability or the health problems are. I mean, she is your wife, so maybe that might be an option. And the thing I'll say about that too, like, it's not a permanent option. If you're given humanitarian parole, it's likely, you know, for at max a year. You could try to renew it after that, but most often, if you're given that humanitarian parole, you'll also be placed in removal proceedings. And if that happens, you know, you're not going to be able to build those 10 years of continuous residence for the cancellation of removal. So that'll be off the table. As far as a family petition, you know, you petitioning for her here in the US, the false claim to US citizenship status, if it applies, it's not going to change the outcome. If while she's here, she's a victim of some sort of crime, then maybe that'll open the door for a U visa. But in terms of the humanitarian parole, I mean, yeah, I don't foresee it being, you know, a big change in terms of the circumstances. You know, maybe applying for a tourist visa, that would be a whole different discussion and analysis whether the false claim would apply to that. But it seems, you know, the thing that's going to have to be verified is, you know, in what year exactly did she make the false claim to citizenship status? Also analyzing, you know, all of these other factors, perhaps even requesting the immigration documents from the consulate in Ciudad Juarez, from USCIS, to see exactly the reasoning for denying it, but I would say it's going to be an uphill battle. The probabilities, of getting some sort of immigration status, of course, depends upon the specific facts, but I would say it's going to be unfortunately a bit difficult. Hopefully this video was helpful. If so, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you and God bless.